questions to ask if we are developing the method. The first one is, what happens if certain conditions are not met? And these, we also have examples of that in the reflections that we had with participants. That they felt that certain conditions, or they felt that there wasn't a space for their story, for example. And this is an example of a storytelling circle in which this person had the feeling that his story could not land in that particular room, in that particular setting. That there was already this dominant story that people shared, and he felt that his story didn't fit into that. So that shows that if that embeddedness, if that reflection on the power structures or that addressing of these power imbalances is not present, then it becomes really difficult to even feel the safety to share something, to share your story. And in this case, I think that already happened because of the constitution of the group that we had there. That a certain story was dominant amongst most of the participants. So these pre-existing hierarchies entered this conversation even before we started the circle. So in this case, it's really important to think about this constitution of the group. But you can also have moments in which it becomes really important to think about how are we going to address these issues, how are we going to talk about them. And Petra already mentioned that we settled on this idea of using terms such as privilege, oppression, memories, history, to try to talk about this without explicitly talking about the particular theme that we want to talk about. In this case, the theme was the colonial past and the past of slavery and its historical traces that are still left today. But we use these notions of privilege and oppression and power to talk about this. But still, that can become really difficult if there's already a dominant story in the room. So it's really important to think on how to address these, because I think this first condition is really vital for all the other conditions to be enacted. For example, in this case, this person who felt like his story didn't have a place there really couldn't get into the fictional storytelling at the end. So I kept thinking and not really understanding, not really feeling connected. So this immersion, this playfulness could not arise. Also this safety to speak could not arise. So he also didn't have the feeling that he could share. So this first condition really had impact on all the other conditions that did or did not, could not be enacted properly. Let's see, lessons learned. This is basically a lot of what I already said. I think one last thing is something that Petra also mentioned, that which I still find a challenge, because as a researcher, I'm doing interviews, I'm asking questions to these people, which I also engaged in the storytelling project, so I was a participant myself. I would like to have had even more collaborations and talks with them to share our experiences. I think that's also due to the fact that in some of the circles we didn't have a reflection afterwards. And Petra also mentioned that in her lessons learned, the reflection is a vital fourth part actually of such a storytelling circle. Without a reflection, it becomes really difficult to try and create this knowledge together, or at least reflect on all the knowledge that was created. So we really need to make time to include this reflection into the process. I think that's one of the most important lessons that we've learned here. All right, so far. Thank you. Shall we take a little break? 5 minutes?
Yes, maybe just if there are some clarifying questions that you have for Timo before going into the break. Anybody? Is anybody in the room who's really puzzled about everything that you've heard? Yeah.
What does CDG stand for?
Common Ground Dialogues.
Oh. Common Ground Dialogues, yeah, the name of the project.
Yeah, I
think I have one sort of really basic question, and I'm sorry if I missed it in one of the, but I think I sort of missed when the theme or the topic that you want to talk about is brought in.
Yeah.
In the, yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of the time the explicit theme isn't introduced in the process at all, but there is because in this case it was when we talked about like the past of slavery and colonial past. That was something that was predetermined, right? Because I think you organized it.
Yes, yeah. So then it also turned out that it doesn't really work like that,
Yeah.
because it's preconditioning already the expectations, right? So and of course we cannot save the slavery past in one storytelling circle. So that doesn't work like that. That was very present. But in general we had pre-talks with participants, and then we talked that we construct the group in a way around this theme, but then on the day itself we didn't bring up the theme. That was that's how we were.
Yeah,
except here.
Sometimes differences and themes are also discovered during the day. So I think in the Budapest, the first storytelling circle where I was present, there wasn't really a predetermined theme, I think. But people did find out during the day that they had all these differences by sharing the memories and sharing the stories. So there wasn't really a theme that we discussed.
It was a diverse group, so that was like incredible that we were from all continents there. So in Hungary, it was like absolutely unexpected. We didn't know. That was.
But I have to go. But I'm so curious. How do you attract the participants then if they don't know what the topic is?
Yeah. Well, I haven't been involved with, I think Sophie and Petra knows better.
Well, when, I don't know, they like to work with me and Jürgen.
That's a good answer. I would too.
And also they ask us to go there and do a storytelling event and play with them. So it's like, and sometimes indeed we think behind the theme of
yeah, and I think also worked, of course, with other partners in the other countries where the research took place, so Slovakia, France, and Hungary. And there, of course, local networks are also active in finding participants.
And because it was a methodology research and we also want to transfer it, the idea was also to invite people to experience a storytelling circle for whom the content and the methodology could be valid for their own professional work or interest. So that was also a kind of way to invite people in. But that differs. For example, in Pilish that was not the case, but also some of the examples from the Netherlands that's not the case. So yeah.
And we were very.
He had his hand raised. Or is there, yeah. So, you want to?
I'm not sure who was first, but it doesn't matter. I was wondering about the impact and the output and outcome and all those things that you need for financer or something. Because I was wondering about this research. You did an intervention while doing research. You did an basically. The outcome of your research, if I can say that, was that the mindsets changed on the spot in that liminal space, I would say. I'm just wondering, is there a follow-up? Is there a next step? Did they bring home a product other than the change of their mind, which is amazing? You know, it's not...
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, so the short time, but there are several spin-offs, especially in Pilish, that the community is going on with the workshop, and they also produced.
Cool. Sorry? Cool.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the things that people mention in storytelling circles where it didn't happen is that they missed this, that it felt so fleeting in a way, like, I kept that mindset of connection for like 2 or 3 days, and then it kind of got lost and we didn't do anything with it. So that's also a really good point that these follow-ups are really valuable to...
Yeah, but that couldn't become in the beginning, and then later on now it's all a kind of little... so really it's transferred, and they do it in different... like this toolkit, they can use it, right? And also now the website is ready, so they can visit. We will invite them to visit it, and they can see their own stories, right? And so there can be all kinds of spin-offs still organized as well, but in general, the good example from Pilish on, it is people, the trainers can bring it further, and it has its own life now. And I'm really happy about that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Timo, thanks. In one of your bullets, you is finding and having control of your own life. Well, that control, the word control really triggered me. Can you explain more on that? Second one is, do you get inspiration from classical work like Recker or Denzen for biographical approach? Yeah.
I haven't used that, but we could talk about that maybe. The thing of taking control of your story or finding your story.
Yeah.
I was also still struggling with finding the right way of phrasing it. So I think it's a really interesting question because I wasn't sure if it was the right way of saying it or expressing it. But the idea was that there were like 2 or 3 participants who explicitly mentioned that it was so valuable for them because they remembered things that they forgotten, and they felt like they had more grip on their story, like that their story wasn't determined by all the negative things that they also remembered, but also what became history, right? I mean, they fled to a different country, and their memory became kind of like a bad memory also because of everything that happened. And then when they were remembering, they felt like, oh yeah, this is my childhood, which is also something that I really enjoyed, and I had all these friends here. So that's what I found really interesting there, and I think that's a mechanism, because through that story they could also make connections, of course, to other people and other people's story. So that's what I meant by that. But if you have suggestions for a better way of phrasing it, then and for everyone, by the way, if you have any ideas of how to improve or how to think along, because like Petra said, this is a methodology research, we haven't finished. So if you have any ideas, suggestions, you are more than welcome.
And that's also possible after the break. You had your answers with...
I still have a question about ECNOS.
Okay, then I propose to have like a very quick break, like 5 minutes.
And one more thing, we have to sign.
I already
it went through. Is there somebody who didn't sign the presence
I did.
It's you didn't, but it should have come through you or. Because we need it because it's a European founded project, so you need it, I don't, but I know from experience that you need it. I would just suggest a very short break, we have something to drink, so we can go on with our discussion and not finish too late. I'll call you back for 5 minutes.
Sorry?
De
knop uitzetten.
Ja, precies. Ja.